Hello, everyone. Welcome to Progress Junior Golf with Live Sport Now and the England Golf Young Ambassadors. My name's Steve Jackson, and this is the musical Ian Waterhouse.
Yes, the composer himself. What do you think of that? Bit of calming music before we get the show underway this evening. I played that one because we lost Olivia in the background, but we've managed to get her back. So, Olivia, I can see you. I know you're back. We'll bring you in soon. Don't worry. Woo!
Right. Panic over with. Right. Now, this podcast is all about junior golf. It's about the next generation of golfers. It's about getting more boys and girls playing the game of golf. This is show number 32. 32.
So you get close to my age now, Steve.
Absolutely.
Well, we've got a few. We might get there by October.
I genuinely wasn't going to mention this, but you just said it. Just said it's actually my birthday today.
Is it?
Yes, it is. Yes,
Is it really?
And I'm not 32.
Yeah. Well, I won't ask how much.
No, more than 32, shall we say? But anyway, we move on. Right, now we've covered a lot in this podcast over the last year or so. We've covered lots of different subjects, but was one which we haven't. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, there's one which we haven't covered directly, which is surprising really, and that's we haven't covered junior coaching as such. Now we've alluded to it, obviously, because inevitably coaching is a vital part of all junior development, and most of the issues we've chatted about have got coaching in some way, shape, or form part of it, but. We really need to cover this, so we're going to do two on this. We're going to do two Progress Junior podcasts on junior coaching. The first one today, obviously, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to look at coaching older juniors, so perhaps the teenage years. Tonight, though, we're just going to concentrate on younger juniors, so even as young as 5 years old, right up until 12 years old, because as I'm sure you appreciate, you've got a young family yourself, Ian. It's very different from dealing with a very young child to dealing with someone a little bit older. And obviously, as a coach, a teacher, everyone, has to deal with them slightly differently. So obviously, it's a very different thing, coaching. So to help us out, we've got England Golf Young Ambassador Olivia Whittle, who Ian alluded to there. I was going to blame you, Ian, because we had a ready. It was going well, and then you said, "Oh, everything seems to be going smoothly here," and then suddenly the internet went down. But fingers crossed, we should be okay. So Olivia's going to join us. Obviously, she's played golf from a very young age, and has received coaching from a very young age. So she obviously can come at an angle of the junior of what she went through at that very young age and the coaching and how that's made her fall in love with the game and carry on playing. But we've also got a PGA professional as well who increasingly specializes in coaching young golfers, and that's Phil Akers. I had a chat with him earlier this week. Now, he's one of the very best in the business, I have to say as well. Twice nominated for England Golf Coach of the Year, and like I say, I chatted with Phil earlier this week, so we're going to hear from him as well and hear his take on it as we go along through the show. Now, as always, we want to hear from you, and in particular, we want to give a shout out to all those brilliant junior golf coaches out there who work with your golfers. Who got them started in the game and hopefully will continue and stay in the game. So we want to hear from you. We've got a very, very simple question for anyone who's out there. Who was your first golf coach? We want to hear from them. Let's give them some big up here. We want to hear from those coaches out there who deserve a bit of credit for getting you into the game. And if you're a coach yourself, then get in touch and say, I coach junior golfers, because we want to hear from you, because I think it's really important that we give you a bit of time and pat you on the back in the podcast.
Do you know my first golf coach, Steve?
Me?
My dad. He was rubbish. Sorry, Dad, if you're watching. But you're not a golf coach. Now, with this as well, please do comment below so we can see your comments. The best place to comment is Live Sport Now on YouTube. There's a link in the body of this broadcast. Give it a click where it says, tell us about your experiences. Click that link. It'll take you straight through to this broadcast on YouTube, Live Sport Now. If you comment there, we can show it on screen, but only if you keep it, what, Steve?
Keep it safe and children friendly, and yes, that's
well, that doesn't rhyme, does it?
No. You took me by surprise. I have no idea what you're going to ask me. Keep it clean. Thank you. Right.
So make sure, please do get in touch, give a shout out. If you have had a golf coach, tell us who it is. We are live across Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. So wherever you're watching, comment on that platform. But the best place to ensure that we see it live during the show is on YouTube. And also, I must say as well, at any point, if you do want to find out more about Progress Junior Golf, there's a link in the body of this broadcast straight to Steve's website. Oh, it's so difficult to do. Steve's website there. That's Steve right there. It's his birthday today as well, so why not visit his website? It's got so much information about junior golf tournaments that are coming up, where they are, how to get there, all the information you need. If you've got a kid who plays junior golf, you have to bookmark Progress Junior Golf. Not just saying it because he's sat there. We're not in the same room, so I can say whatever I want. It's not like he can reach around and punch me in the face. So I can say whatever I want. But do get in touch with us and do visit Steve's website. Sorry, Steve. Back to you, mate.
That's all right. I mean, he wouldn't have said anything nice about me, but he knows it's my birthday, so therefore, yeah, absolutely. Right. First things first, then, let's do the junior golf news then. We're getting close to the US Masters, so we're getting close to the start of the golf season. And, of course, we're getting close to Easter as well, so there's going to be a lot of competitions coming up over the next few weeks or so. But we'll stay with the US Masters, actually, because we've got a big event coming up in the next, actually started today, and that's the Augusta National Women's Amateur Championship. So the field that is played over 54-hole stroke play. The first 2 rounds are contested at the Champions Retreat Golf Club today and tomorrow. Then the final round will be held at Augusta National. So that's on April the 1st. Golfers who we mentioned on a regular basis, actually, from this country: Jess Baker, Hannah Darling, Charlotte Heath, Kaylee McGinty, Amelia Williamson, and Lottie Woe. They're all playing in it. If I'm being honest, I haven't looked at the scores from today. I think they have already teed off, so I don't know how they're getting on today, but obviously
I'll
it is.
Check Lottie's Twitter whilst we're in it.
Okay, all right. Now, 2 players, though, who are playing in that competition, who've been playing recently. They played in the Junior Invitational at nearby Sage Valley. Anna Davis, 17-year-old Anna Davis, she won that competition. 7 under par, won the women's competition, beat Nika Ito. So both of those 2 players obviously going into that event in good form. And interesting as well that there was a men's competition with that as well, and that was won by British amateur champion Aldrich Potgieter, and he will be playing the US Masters. I can also say as well, because he won the British Amateur Championship last year, he also played against the US Amateur champion Sam Bennett in what's called the Georgia Cup, the 26th edition of the Georgia Cup, and he beat him 5-4. So well done to him. He's a South African golfer, but very young golfer. I think he might only be 17 or 18. So he's certainly one. We mentioned him before on this podcast. Certainly one to watch out for there. Right, back in this country then. Competition's taking place. The Convoy Scratch competition that took place at Delamere Forest. Harriet Lockley from Burnham and Barrow won that on countback from Maggie Whitehead and Annabelle Collis. Scores of 72 and 73. Up in Scotland then, Scottish Student Championships took place at Moray, the old course. So it was a women's and a men's competition. The women's competition was won by Lorna McClymont from Milngavie. Actually, there's a bit of a theme looking at the results of what's been happening over the last few years. So big win. I mean, she was 10 under par and she won by 15 shots. So, I mean, hats off to her. Scores of 73, 76, 70, and 71. Like I say, won by 15 shots from Maria Toledo Bailey. Ellie Doherty was in 3rd position. The men's competition was run by Jack Brown from Turnberry. He was 3 under par. George Cannon, who we've seen play on the Founder Series, he finished 2nd in that. The Bucks, English, and Welsh Championships are once again another student competition. There tends to be a few student competitions at this time of the year because it's coming up towards Easter, so it's best to get them out of the way while the kids are still at school, if that makes sense, as opposed to doing it during the Easter break. So that competition that took place at Sherwood Forest, won by Jack Levisage from Northumbria, 2 under par, won by 1 shot. From Thomas Trowbridge. The women's competition, I say women's competition, I think it's because of obviously they can be a little bit older because at the end of the day it's obviously university. Kira Barnes won that from Bournemouth. She won on cowback actually from Morgan Thomas from Nottingham. Now, just one of the competition, big competition actually, inaugural competition. Then we got a photo of the winner. This one, under 21s girls Northampton Tigress was won by Matilda Santilli from Fox Hills Golf Club. There she is. She won by, I did say, big winning margin. She won by 13 shots. Once again, it was a 54-hole competition, so that takes some doing. Took place at Northampton Golf Club. The first time they've ever held this competition, but world ranking event. Got an excellent field and lots of England internationals playing in it, including English girls Open champion Sophia Fulbrook, who was she was actually 2nd after the opening round. Santilla got 73 to start off with, them 73 and 74 kind of like surged clear on the final day. But well done to her. And someone who I know, actually, Amy Nunn, got a hole in one on the second day. So well done to
nice.
well done to Amy. From a personal point of view, I was running an event last weekend, the Shires Junior Golf Tour, our first event of the year. That took place at Brampton Heath, the biggest field for any junior open medal this decade in Northamptonshire. I'm pleased to say, sold out completely. So well done to all the kids.
Steve Jackson.
Absolutely.
Not only is it your birthday,
yes,
top man.
Absolutely, yeah.
I've got a picture before you carry on. Actually, I just wanted to show this. I've managed to source this picture. There is Lottie at a very familiar place. Of course, she is. In action, what are we today? So she actually tees off tomorrow at 9:44 in the morning. That's 2:44 UK time. So there you go. So we'll be watch Lottie Wise in action on Sky Sports Golf. Not as good as live sport now.
Of course not. No. We'll have to follow you then just to find out how she's getting on, because I'm not getting up at 2:30 in the morning to try and find out. So
I mean, imagine paying a subscription to watch golf when you could just watch it for free with us at Live Sport.
Absolutely. Well done. Get that plug in. Right. Some events coming up then. We did mention the fact that Easter's coming up. So Faldo Series, they've got their first event of the season. That's the Brocket Hall on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Full field.
Still looking for my invite. By the way,
still
Matthew,
waiting
if you're watching,
yes.
still.
Yes.
Is it underneath
yes.
here? No. Is it underneath the laptop? No.
He's in the UAE at the moment as well. So you didn't get the invite to that either, did you?
No. I'd rather have that invite.
Yeah. Other events coming up. Northern Junior Golf Tour. They've got some sold out field for their first event. British Junior Golf Tour. Many junior organisations. There are going to be a lot of competitions taking place over Easter. So good luck to anyone who's playing any competitions over the next few weeks or so. That wraps up the junior golf news. Then let's get on to the podcast. Then we're going to be talking about junior coaching. Then we're going to get Phil Akers, who twice nominated for England Golf Coach of the Year. But let's get our special guest on. Hopefully, fingers crossed, touch a bit of wood to make sure the internet connection is working. Olivia Whittle, one of the England Golf Young Ambassadors. And there she is, of course. So internet connection working okay? Fingers crossed, yes?
Yeah, hopefully. I've had to change from my laptop to my iPhone, so it should be all right now.
Good. Right. So we're obviously going to be talking about junior coaching today. And in particular, we're going to be talking about junior coaching for younger golfers. So just give us an idea about when you first started playing golf and when you first started receiving coaching.
Yeah, so when I started playing golf, I was about 6. And obviously I started playing because I live on a golf course as well. So it kind of helps. But I received coaching probably within the first year of being on the golf course. So I just did that with the range and then just got used to it from there.
Do you remember it? I mean, obviously it's a little while ago now for you, but do you remember almost your first lesson?
I remember doing the junior golf camps that they do throughout the half term, and then I always remember my dad would take me out for 9 holes, and I'd always have the 1-7 iron that I just have to start off with before I got a full set of clubs. So I do remember most of it.
Okay, right. So let's hear from Phil Akers then, because the question I put in first of all was, what age do you start coaching juniors? And as a father, he had an interesting take on that. This is what Phil had to say.
Me thinking a lot about it at the moment, because my little boy's 3 years old at the moment, and it's funny. I saw one of my good friends down the road. His little daughter has just taken part in a dance show, and my little boy is nowhere near that yet. As a 3-year-old, his attention span is just nowhere near it. But he likes to toddle around. He likes to swing a club. He likes to hit me. He likes to hit little things. Whereas my friend's little daughter, her attention span, her maturity is so much more advanced than Alfie. So it's all individual to children, to the specific individual. Because we've got these two different things. We've got this sort of this biological age that says even though this child might be 3 years old, physically they might be way more advanced than that. You always had them kids in your school that were maybe a foot taller than you and stuff like that, where they just matured that little bit earlier biologically. And then you've got your chronological age, which is saying, well, you're actually this how many times you've been around the sun. And you know what, that doesn't really tell us much, unfortunately. Some kids mature later, some kids develop a little bit earlier. But so as a rule of thumb, we normally sort of say, once they get into 4s, 5s, 6s, around that sort of age, normally sort of like they're quite happy to sort of like be in a group. Maybe they've been at nursery, maybe they've just started primary school and stuff, and they can sort of stay in a safe-ish sort of environment without running out onto the driving range, getting their head walloped off and stuff like that. But in all fairness, like you can never start too young if you start in the right environment with it. If you get the children sort of like loving being around the environment, it's not necessarily about sort of like hitting great shots or anything like that. Like you might just be at the golf club with them. It might be racing a buggy against your kid and taking them out for a little ride on it, where they just want to be in that environment. They associate it with sort of like being with their parents. They associate it with being sort of like doing fun stuff. And that's it. If we can sort of like create that love of being in that environment at first, that's the biggest driver for me for when a child's ready, you know.
So let's talk about the specifics of coaching then. Of when do you start? So let's start with, let's say, with the 6-year-old then. The 6-year-old comes to you. I know you mentioned there that a 6-year-old could be very different from a advanced to all different ages kind of thing. But if you let's go with the 6-year-old to start off with, and let's say when they first come into you, how much coaching do you do? What form does the coaching take at that age?
Well, first of all, as I say, sort of like it's that love of the game that we want to create, and then each individual is so much different. Some kids maybe have different goals to others, and let's say that I have one child come in, and you know what, they're really clued in. They don't like mucking around with the other kids and that, and they maybe are a little bit more astute on wanting to get out on the golf course with dad and beating granddad on putting competitions and stuff like that. That child maybe sort of like might be better off in sort of like more of an individual sort of lesson sort of thing, whereas other 6-year-olds might be a little bit happier to muck around and sort of like slowly, gradually learn that love of the game. But just being around that environment, they start to learn, they start to pick up on things naturally with it. And we start to shape their development and learning through sort of like giving them physical literacy skills, where they're going to start to be able to swing clubs an awful lot easier without them really knowing it. Like if I can get them hitting tennis balls and catching and stuff like that, actually they become so much more malleable as just athletes. Like they can run, hop, skip, jump, and then actually them trying to find the middle of the golf club with a middle of the golf club becomes a lot easier. So it's actually quite a long process that goes into it, and not explicit coaching of hands got to be there, feet's got to be there and stuff. Normally we start to build the athlete before that bit, and then as we progress through, then we might start to layer in sort of like fundamentals of it, where we've got themes of information that we sort of try and layer into our coaching here at Alton Hall. Sort of like, let's say one of them is speed, another one is strike, and sort of like we might have sort of like different terms where we'll focus on, say, strike, and then we'll get the kids to sort of like come up with these answers themselves, like things that might influence it, such as how far away you stand from the ball and things like this, and how long the golf club is. And they start to pick up the information sort of, rather than just giving it to them. We want them to sort of question and sort of learn it themselves, you know.
That's obviously Phil talking about how he coached younger golfers there. So I asked you the question about what you remember, Olivia, when you first took it up. Can you remember that experience of learning the game almost, well, it would have been completely without knowing what golf was, kind of thing?
Yeah, so like when I was obviously 6, I obviously like did a few lessons after school, and like it was all about having fun and like taking part and making friends. And then obviously when you get older, you start to have like one-to-one lessons and start to learn about all the grip, the stance, and all of that stuff. But like obviously when you're 6, you just want to have fun, don't you?
We've had a podcast previously where we spoke to Aaron Lansbury, who's another golf coach who specializes in young golfers, and one of the things that he started with his kids is not even is almost to take the golf ball out of it and just hit in a box and things like that. Is that kind of thing which completely non-golf, but it was the same type of idea? Can you remember doing something similar, things like that?
Yeah, so like obviously I had like fun lessons at the range, and like it's just like different things like hitting plastic balls. Like you can get them ones that like have the holes in it and like just put in those in the house. It's just fun things like that. And then obviously at school we had some like tri golf lessons, and that was like using the plastic clubs with the really big heads, and then obviously like the foam balls. And yeah, it's just the fun. That was quite fun.
Okay, let's give a name check here. What was the golf club whereby you first started playing then? What was that?
The Chase Golf Club in Staffordshire.
And who was your golf coach then? What was the name?
Katrina Holford at the time. It's now Katrina White.
Okay, and is she still there? Is she still doing coaching at the same golf club?
Yeah. So like, obviously now I'm older. I obviously do what I did when I was younger, but I actually help her now. So obviously encourage the younger ones to actually have fun and get used to the game.
Okay, so let's just hear from Phil again, because he was talking about, the question I asked him was about finding the right golf club, because there are different golf clubs whereby it might be appropriate for younger golfers, and also finding the right professional as well in those facilities. This is what Phil had to say.
Never played before. What I'd always sort of like recommend parents to do is speak to the PGA professional, see what offering there is at that facility, because at the end of the day, we're trying to create golfers. Like, we want them children to start getting out on the golf course eventually. And if there's not the right junior set up at that facility, actually they'll end up doing more harm than good, I think. If it's just a money maker for professionals, which it is unfortunately for some professionals, and they don't have the infrastructure then for sort of like introducing them to friends at a facility. They don't have that infrastructure of them being able to play out on the golf course and be able to guide them in the right direction. If I was a parent, I would be looking for that, where that facility has that opportunity for your child to get into regular sessions, to make friends, to have fun at the facility, and actually being able to get out on the golf course, because that's the pathway that we sort of lead into.
So on that specific point of trying to find the right facility which has the right pro who can deal with that child, and be the ideal coach for them, what would your recommendation then be? Is it more a case of the parent can hopefully talk to someone who has been through that? So perhaps a friend at school or something like that, or parent of another child. It almost comes through recommendations.
Yeah, word of mouth's fantastic, isn't it? But like, even just sort of say this podcast, like, people have now seen me, they'll see that I've got maybe like an interest or a passion in junior coaching and that. And there's loads of wonderful junior coaches out there. There's loads of wonderful facilities out there. And then, like, speak to the professional. You'll get the sense from them if they want to, if they're actually passionate about junior coaching or not. But it is a minefield as well, like, go there, speak to the junior organisers at the golf club as well, because often the professional and the junior organizer are two separate entities with it. So you might get your child enrolled at a golf club because you want them to play, and they might have a wonderful sort of like junior section where they play against all different golf clubs. They go away on trips away and stuff like that. But equally, there might not be that coaching at the facility for them as well. So it might be the case that you could have your lessons at one facility, but you actually have your child as a member, as it were, or sort of like where they play at a different golf course.
How important is it to get that right environment and facility for those?
I mean, like, how many people are put off golf each year by not knowing, and then maybe say changing their shoes in the car park and getting barked at in the car park and stuff like that, or a child running around and shouting and being told to be quiet and stuff. Look, some facilities are like that, and that's fine. Sort of like, some people love, like, let's say, this is to stereotype, by the way, like a private members facility where it might be a little bit stricter on the rules, on dress codes and stuff like that, where actually for a child, that's not always easy to sort of adhere by them, and they don't often see that as fun. Whereas I would sort of recommend sort of like a facility where actually they're a little bit more lax with it. I often find driving ranges are a little bit easier for them to sort of like integrate into at first, because people might be sort of like wearing shorts and shirts are untucked and music might be playing and stuff like that, where it's a little bit more of a lively environment. And then as they grow into it and start to enjoy it, they'll start to understand that there are maybe certain rules and etiquettes that come with golf. But I wouldn't be looking to layer that in too early for 6 and 7 year olds. Try and keep it fun. Try and keep it a lively, buzzing environment if you can do.
That's obviously Phil Akers talking about getting the right golf, getting the right facility, getting the right professional as well. Obviously, Olivia, you were very fortunate in the fact that you went to a golf club which did have that. But what would you say with the characteristics which make that so welcoming for you?
So like you go up the range and you make your friends, and then obviously like you get to like aim at targets as well on the range, so it's like brings that fun aspect into it. And then obviously as well you've got like the Three Hammers, which is in Staffordshire as well, which has got like the Top Tracer, and obviously for the younger ones you've got like Go Fish. So obviously they can interact with that. And then all like the mini golf round as well, that quite gets them into it as well.
I think I'm right thinking Three Hammers have got a little par 3 course as well there as well, which is ideal, isn't it, for very young golfers?
Yeah, so obviously they've made that into a 15-hole par 3 course now, and they've obviously building at the moment this like dinosaur adventure golf as well. So obviously it's kind of quite good to take all the younger ones up there just as like a beginner's course.
I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the dinosaurs and like a beginner course, things like that. I mean, I started out on the putting greens on holiday and the crazy golf and all that kind of thing as well, which is an ideal way to get kids in, a real fun way of doing it, you know. And obviously there aren't too many of those at golf courses, but that's an easy way of kind of like getting the message to them, the fact that this is an environment where you can enjoy it.
Yeah.
Is that what you did when you were on holiday? Did you do the crazy golf when you were away and things like that?
Yeah, so like we went away to like the Isle of Wight sometimes. Then obviously you got like the beach, and then obviously there's like mini golf on the side as well.
So let's talk about facilities as well then, because obviously Phil mentioned there about driving range being a little bit more welcoming, a bit easier of an environment. Is that something which you've experienced in when you were a junior, and also now when you're a little older and you're watching juniors come through the same kind of experience?
Yeah, so like when I go up the range, there's always like some juniors up there, and then on like the weekends or like on a weekday after school, there's always like a junior session going on. So it could be like for an hour, and then if there's obviously juniors up there not involved in that, they could ask questions as well, which I've obviously because I'm being older, obviously you can see that happening.
Have you, I mean, you're obviously now an England Golf Young Ambassador. Have you had parents come up to you and ask you the question of how do I find the right facility? And what would your advice be to them if they did come up to you and ask that question?
Well, obviously just like tell them it's like a really good sport to get involved in, and then obviously you can tell them like the local golf clubs and local lessons to get them involved in, and obviously you can start their journey from there. And
also you mentioned the fact that you've got a coach, had a coach from a very young age who's still doing the same thing now. Just give us an idea about why she is so good with young golfers then.
Well, she like focuses more like on juniors, as not obviously she has adult lessons as well, but like in the holidays she like has golf camps. She makes it fun. So obviously like, we play battleships, and like that's a fun aspect to obviously younger ones as well who play games on their iPads. And it's a bit similar, but obviously it's doing it with golf.
And go on, explain that then, because I've never heard of battleships. Explain. Obviously, I know the game battleships, the board game, but go on, explain that. How do you play that?
Yeah, so on the chipping green, you put like some cones out. You divide it into probably teams of 2. Say if there's 12 kids, you'd put 6 on one side, 6 on the other. 3 bays on each side, so 2 teams of 2, and then they have to literally just try and first one to finish and collect all their cones. Obviously, chipping them, hit them, and then obviously we pick them up.
Okay. So a little bit different, and we will come to this a little bit earlier where we talk about getting the competitive side in as well, and the battle, if you like, between fun and competitive. But by the sounds of it, they've got it right already with that.
Yeah, obviously it's very exciting for them as well, because they're obviously like focus on hitting the cones and like pushing their friends to do that as well.
Okay, now obviously we're talking about junior golf here, but there is something as well which we need to talk about as well, and that's the professional themselves. And if there's any professionals watching this and thinking, you know, whether they're considering, you know, perhaps new professionals, perhaps assistant professionals, whether they want to coach juniors or not. So let's just hear from Phil, who talks about the motivation which he gets from coaching juniors. This is what Phil has to say.
Internal, external motivations for these things. So we sort of like... That intrinsic one is the biggest one. If I can make them love the facility, they want to come down here all the time, and then they want to get out the golf course, and the more they want to get there, the better they'll get, sort of thing. But we offer external ones as well, where they get like different coloured caps and gradings. I know some facilities sort of like go through certificates and badges and that, just like what you would do at, say, swimming or something like that, or scouts, where you get your little external ones as well. And you know what, that's a really important thing, I think, where sort of like golf's evolving and it's developing and stuff over the last 15, 20 years, where I know that when I started playing, it was just like the professional was just on the driving range, just walked up and down the line. There was no game set out. It was just like, put your hand there, put that hand there, and hit the ball, and clubs that are way too big for me. Whereas now, sort of, it's like, you know, we do like a physical grading, and we do like skills challenges with it, and then sort of like then there's on-course sessions for them as well. So they sort of develop through, and then we've got junior teams, and then we've got golf college, which is starting in September, and then hopefully there's a full pathway all the way through, depending on where they want to get to. But some of these kids equally, like, it's just fun. Like, they just like being there with their friends, and they don't necessarily need to get better at it. There's sort of like exit pathways with that as well, where we want them to be lifelong golfers, because not every one of them is going to become a professional golfer, or they're not going to make it on tour and stuff. So it's more important for me to create that love of the game where they just like playing golf than what it is for them to become a fantastic golfer.
So obviously Phil there, who you know, it's obvious he has a passion for junior golf and he loves coaching junior golfers. But you must have come across professionals who avoid coaching juniors, or perhaps, if we word it the other way around, they concentrate more on adult golfers. If they came and spoke to you, what would your advice be in saying about what are the benefits and how they can, you know, the enjoyment that they can get out of coaching juniors?
Yeah, well, obviously the juniors that are coming through today are going to be the golfers in the future, because obviously them people there aren't always going to be playing golf for the rest of their life. So obviously you need to encourage them to get into golf, and then hopefully their career can be golf, and like support them through that.
Also, as well, I mean, we'll go on and have a chat about the golf and equipment as well. Just give us your experience of what kind of equipment were you using when you very first started out?
Yeah, so when I first started, I always remember I had a blue 7 iron, going around the 9 holes with that all the time. But obviously now you can get like little 4-set golf clubs in with a little bag for them, which I find is quite cool.
And also there's the bigger headed ones. There's I think you mentioned earlier, bigger balls as well, which can make it, you know, easier to play, because we all know golf is not an easy game to play. So to make it as easy as you possibly can, particularly to start off with, it is important, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, did you ever have that? Did you ever have it whereby when you went from a 7 on, when did you just start building up a set of golf clubs, if you see what I mean?
So when obviously I realised that I actually enjoyed it, wanted to get into more lessons, I decided to obviously speak to my mum and dad and was like, I want to like take it serious. So then that's when I got my first set of masters clubs, and just begun from there.
Okay, let's hear from Phil then, because he's obviously he's someone who coaches juniors and obviously has to give recommendations as far as golf equipment is concerned. So what would he do as far as those juniors are concerned, particularly the younger juniors, with the golf equipment? This is what he had to say.
We're quite lucky. We've got a great big junior program here. We've got 150 kids a week that come through, and obviously all of them kids are growing at different rates, moving up a size in clubs, and actually sort of growing into them and so on. So we do sort of like a club trade here between the juniors, so it doesn't end up costing mum and dad an absolute fortune all the time, because it can be a lot. It can be 200 quid for a set of US kids clubs and that if you first get into it. Whereas, you know what, I'd always sort of recommend sort of like buying clubs that fit your child now. A little bit like taking your child to Clark's. They're not going to sell you a pair of shoes that are going to grow in. They'll measure their feet, and then they'll fit you for that pair of shoes. Because unfortunately, when you get kids with clubs that are way too big, way too heavy for them, actually, like, they can't hit the ball, so therefore they're not going to enjoy that. And then if they're not enjoying golf, they're not going to want to go back. So it's over and done with before they've even got started. Whereas if you can try and get them with clubs, I'd always recommend clubs that are slightly too short and too light rather than too big than too heavy at first. But that is a hard one for parents as well, because you want as much use out of them clubs as possible. And, like you might see behind me there, like on that wall, there's a little measuring chart that, it's very simple for parents to sort of like go to American Golf or somewhere like that, measure the child, see what clubs they should be in. And you've got some wonderful golfing brands as well that make really light, really good golf clubs for kids, such as like US Kids, Golfing for Kids are really good, and M Kids. But then you've got other brands which unfortunately tend to do more harm than good as well, that are very heavy, don't have a lot of loft on them. Like your DDH and Slazingers, as a rule of thumb, have been pretty poor in my sort of experience with them.
It's obviously the kids love the ball going in the air. So do you encourage them more to go with wedges and perhaps 7-iron above, as opposed to longer clubs which are more difficult to hit?
Oh, Jesus, all they want to do is hit driver. Like, you can let a child loose on the driving range with 100 balls with a driver, and they'll be through them in 15 minutes, and they'll want more golf balls. And if that's what they love doing, great. But eventually, like, they do like seeing that ball go in the air. And it is like, it's funny, some of these sessions that we do, like, people will come in and their 6-year-old will have a 3-iron in the set, and it's like, it's never going to get the ball up in the air. They're not got enough. I haven't got enough swing speed to get it up in the air. They definitely won't, sort of thing. So yeah, definitely start with more loft. Don't feel frightened of letting your child use a tee and stuff as well. Like, as you just said, they love seeing that ball get up in the air. So anything that's going to help them with that, that's a big thumbs up.
So obviously that's Phil talking about the golf equipment that he does at Alton. What do they do at your golf club? How do they help juniors with the equipment, the coaches?
So like the coaches that do the sessions will obviously guide them along of what clubs they need. But obviously in the pro shop here at the Chase, they do golf clubs. So it goes up through ages, and obviously they can guide them through that.
I mean, one of the golf clubs near me, that one of the ways that they do it as well is that obviously, as we know, juniors tend to grow, and they tend to grow out of their club. So what happens is that they then get given back to the golf club, and then they can pass on to the next junior who might be a very similar size or age or whatever, and they can then take them on. So therefore, even if you might only be buying one set, someone I mean might be saying buying one set of golf clubs, but they might be used for 3, 4, 5 different people. Because is that something which you're aware of at your club, or do something similar?
Yeah, so obviously you can trade golf clubs in, and obviously you can get that price down for the new set, which is quite handy. Because obviously when the kids are growing, they grow quite fast, so there's always need of something.
And also, I've seen that video. Obviously, I did the interview with Phil, but each time he mentions to me about the fact that when the driver comes out, the kids just want to hit the driver. Presumably, that's an experience you've seen as well with yourself, and also you've seen yourself. They love getting out there and smacking the ball, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. Like junior sessions, it's like, when are we getting the driver out? And we're just like, it's been 10 minutes, like.
Okay, now obviously we talked about equipment there, but what about coaching as well? Let's hear from Phil there, because obviously coaching, and we'll talk about the expensive equipment as well, but coaching can also be expensive as well. Just a brief comment here from Phil about how we can try and keep the coaching down, the price down. This is what Phil had to say.
That's where groups are good. If you want an individual lesson, then, unfortunately, you're probably looking at paying the pros time, which is going to be probably £40 to £60 or so if you wanted an individual hour lesson, depending on what type of pro that you get. But that's normally what a pro sort of rate varies between. But then for groups, you might be sort of like looking at it being towards like £5 to £10 a session for a junior, which, if you compare that to, say, swimming or something like that, it normally stands in line with it,
So you mentioned earlier, Olivia, the fact that you did group coaching, but you also did individual coaching as well. I mean that can be, obviously I don't want to go into the details of your own experience, but that can be expensive, can't it, doing individual coaching on your own? Is that an experience whereby you've seen with other juniors and they might be a little bit put off by doing the individual and prefer going the group route?
Yeah, definitely. Like, obviously, I started off with group sessions, and then obviously when I realised that I actually enjoyed it and wanted to carry on with the game, I started to have one-to-one lessons. But obviously, the younger children now are like starting with the group lessons. But then obviously when they're making friends as well in those group sessions, they always sometimes, if they want individual lessons, they sometimes do like dual lessons, so like they can do it together, which obviously that halves the price.
And also, I mean, we mentioned earlier, the question I asked to Phil earlier was about the motivation for a professional to go into junior coaching. That is the motivation there, is the fact that you might be able to do those group sessions, but eventually you might be able to get the individual sessions on the back of that. Particularly if you have a big group, you would hope that there'll be, perhaps 2 or 3 of them who would want to come back for the individual lessons, as you did. And is that experience whereby you've seen, whereby the bigger the group, the more opportunity you have of the coach getting more lessons on the back of that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's always like a handful that are always interested in individual lessons and wanting to go and practice up the range even outside of those lesson times.
Okay, now a point we raised earlier, which was about competitions, and we'll get Phil's take on this, but I just want to ask you first of all, when did you first start playing competitions?
I probably started playing like on the course competitions probably when I was about 9, just so I've like used to it, know every aspect before I jump into the full 18 holes round of golf, and started even like doing 9-hole competitions that have been put on by the club.
So that was 3 years. So that's obviously a fair old gap between when you first started having coaching and getting into the game before you actually moved into competitions. Is that something which your coach decided to keep you away from, or was that something which you just didn't have the opportunity to?
No, I don't think it was like the coach. I think it was just generally building that confidence to actually go out and go in a field with competitors, as well as obviously being up the range for so long. It's just getting that confidence to go on the course as well.
Okay, let's hear from Phil then, because that's a question I asked him. When does a coach start to introduce competitions to very young junior golfers?
Often it can become a little bit too serious too soon. I've seen it. It's been interesting coming back to Alton Hall. I've seen a lot of juniors that were very good, very young, and then sort of like travelled around to Pinehurst playing in US kids golf and stuff like that, and sort of almost thought upon as prodigies as at 5, 6 years old. And then parents, like, we love to see that our child is very good at something very early, because we think that that's going to relate come when they're 25, 26 and they're going to become the best golfers in the world. And unfortunately, the child might just be in that enjoyment phase. And then once it starts to become a little bit too serious too early, the discussions often with parents doesn't become, did you enjoy that today? It was more, why did you miss that putt on the 3rd hole? That was a stupid shot. And therefore sort of like the relationship starts to change. So I'd be wary of where your child is at with it. But for me, sort of like, if they're showing an interest in it, if they're starting to be like, you know what, like I really fancy that trip away to, I don't know, a different golf club, say that the local golf club down the road is running a junior open, great, go for it. See what that experience is like, and try and keep that as fun as you possibly can. Try not to worry so much about the outcome, whether they do good or bad. Try and see it as sort of like, this is a fantastic experience. What a wonderful day we've had out. Wasn't that a nice golf club that we played at? Did you make some friends and that? And then, you know what, if they pick up a longest drive, or if they pick up a closest pin or whatever, great. Like, win some golf balls, get a little voucher and stuff. Whereas I think once they start to get towards sort of like 13s, 14s, 15s or so, often you normally find that these kids start to become naturally a little bit more competitive, like once they've started to specialise a little bit more in the sport. So I'd always try and keep kids towards much more of a fun competitions where it's not so based on the outcomes early. But you can't get kids out on the golf course early enough if they're run correctly, I think.
And presumably, if we're talking about competitions, there are ways as a professional to bring in competitions within your coaching, so that it almost becomes part of the game, the competitive side of it. And I mean, I remember doing an interview with this podcast with Bronte Law, and the question I put to Bronte Law was, competitive golf and fun golf, and she said, "Well, I just loved the competitive. That was the fun bit for me." So there are ways whereby, if you bring the two of them together, they sit next to each other, not being opposed.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that competition's bad or anything like that. Sort of like, I just think sort of like a parent spending £3,000 to go out to the United States for a 6-year-old competition. I think that's a lot of pressure very early to go to, say, Pinehurst for a week. And then I think if they're playing for a Mars bar and a Ribena, I think that's probably enough for a 6-year-old. I don't think that dad's given up a month's worth of wages for their child to play good at golf. That's kind of more where I was coming at with it.
So obviously that's Phil talking about competitions, a different type of competition. So we mentioned earlier about your first competition was when you were around about 9 years old. What was it? Was that a junior open? Was that within your own club? What was that competition?
Well, I think like when I first started, it would probably been like the first like monthly Stableford at my home club. But obviously when I got older, probably around like 10, 11, I started to enter like some of the Shire Tour junior events. And then obviously Robert Rock, the Robert Rock Tour. And now like I'm playing in like England events. The Delamere Convoy played at the last weekend, just gone. So it just obviously what Phil said earlier, it's just gaining that confidence and obviously don't jump in it too fast.
And obviously things have changed a little bit. I might be wrong in saying this, but perhaps you might have been in a situation where when you first started playing that you had to get your handicap down to 36 to even play in the junior competition. Was that the case?
Yeah, definitely. Like for women, it's like 36. But it was definitely one of those that were like, oh, I need to get it down to that. But obviously, I was doing that in my own time because obviously I don't want to rush it. Just because I wanted to play in that one event. I obviously had many years left in it as a junior.
Yeah, but obviously the difference now is the fact that you now you have 54 handicap whereby you can play in competition. So at least it gives those higher handicap players. And also, was that first competition was that an 18-hole competition? The first one you played in, was that a 9-hole competition?
It was 18 holes, but obviously for the different ages, like if you had a 54 handicap, you could obviously choose to play 9 holes, or you could choose 18. It just depends on which one I wanted to do, really.
And how important are those 9-hole competitions? Because they are the ones whereby, and Phil alluded to there, is giving Mars bars for prize and things like that. Perhaps we shouldn't recommend that as far as giving kids chocolate bars, things like that. But just fun ways of making it. The result was almost irrelevant. How important was that when you were growing up?
No, definitely. It's not always about the result. It's always just about having fun, making friends. And then obviously, if you want to take it seriously and start entering bigger competitions, that's when you want to try and go for the Mars bar or the trophy.
Okay, now obviously there's something else which we do need to discuss as well. We'll ask Phil the question, then we'll bring it on to you. But it's not just about coaching juniors, obviously. It's also about coaching adults, because obviously some of these juniors, their parents may have never played the game before, and obviously this is something that Phil needs to deal with, or all coaches need to deal with, in the sense that they're not just coaching the junior, they might well be coaching the adult in how to almost complete beginner to the game of golf. So let's hear what Phil had to say about coaching adults as well as juniors.
Provide sort of like recommended readings and resources like these podcasts and so on. Like we'll try and signpost the parents to it, but equally, like you've always got outliers, and within golf, you've obviously got this famous standout parenting example of Earl Woods with Tiger Woods, where Tiger's watching him hit golf balls from his first steps or before he could walk and stuff, and like it can work. Like as much as the research sort of says, like we should be really diverse in sort of like the facilities that sort of like we let them play in and the types of sports that they play in and not be too competitive too soon. You've also got on the other side of the coin, Tiger Woods, where it was like pretty golf specific from an early age, and it was very authoritarian parenting. And you know what, he done very well in a golf setting. However, it's what it maybe takes away from a personal setting that I think parents should be worried about with that. Okay, so they should just be aware of it, not worried, aware of how it can be. If you specialize in a sport too soon, it can often stop your child maybe interacting with other children. It can maybe stop them being able to play lots of different sports and actually making their own decisions sometimes with it. So, you know, if you can, wonderful resources on like Netflix, is it The Short Game and stuff like Daddy, good book called The Daddy Caddy and so on. So, you know, like you can only advise and sort of like recommend, but equally it's their child at the end of the day, and that they know from their experiences what maybe worked for them, and that's it. They're in the best place to maybe judge with that, and we can only sort of suggest, you know.
That actually reminds me, we've got some podcasts coming up which are going to be touching on some of these subjects. So, for example, we're going to be doing probably a podcast on pushy daddies or pushy parents. We're also going to be doing one on not just concentrate on golf, but also concentrate on different sports and how the diversity of using different sports can help golf and help you enjoy the game. But I just want to ask specifically, Olivia, about the question which I put to Phil right the way at the start there, is this: that if you have a parent at a coaching session who doesn't know anything at all about junior golf, and presumably you've been in this situation whereby you've been part of those coaching sessions and you've almost had to coach the parent just as much as you've had to coach the junior, what do you do in those scenarios?
And obviously they're going to be there with the lesson as well. But obviously if they go up to practice after, the parents are going to be there and explaining what happened in the lesson, and then obviously giving you more pointers. And it's obviously just encouraging you more as well. But obviously when you get older, it sometimes is the pressure there as well when in an event. I'm
just thinking as well in particular of when you have a parent who doesn't really know the game. I'll give you an example. I was at an event of the weekend whereby there was 4 juniors who were loving it, going out there and playing the golf course, but the parents who were walking around with them didn't know the game of golf, so therefore they couldn't pick out some of the things which they were doing which weren't quite right because they didn't know the game themselves. And how difficult is that when you're involved in the coaching session, whereby it's completely innocent on the parent's part, but or doesn't have to be the parent, it could be a supporter of some description. But when you're there, do you have to almost like say, take them to one side and say, actually, you are aware that they probably need to do it this way? Have you had that experience?
Not really. Like my mum and dad are quite like know what to do at golf. In the fairways, instead quite out of the way, so like they don't really get involved as much. But obviously, you can get them parents that are very involved and start like waving their hands around like what do that for, and then obviously they storm off, but it can affect the juniors' performance. But yeah. Okay,
let's move on to the last point then. We're going to hear what Phil has to say about this, and this is in particular about being a coach. And just a simple question I'll put to him is what's the greatest thrill? Is it coaching a junior into a top player, or is it coaching a junior just to fall in love with the game? This is what Phil had to say.
I want to be a tour coach, and I suppose when I started at Alton Hall 12 or 13 years ago, something like that, there was 2 tour coaches that was already here. And as a 21-year-old or so, like I sort of thought, why would any tour player walk in here and want to have a golf lesson with me over them 2 tour coaches that have been there for the last 25, 30 years worth of experience and results behind them? So I created sort of like a junior development program to try and do that. It was called the Future Elite Junior Golf Program. Based upon that, where we took into sort of like our mantra as sort of like person first, athlete second, golfer third with it. And you know what, like I'd done sort of like 6 or 7 years like work at Alton Hall with it, and it was great, huge success. And it's been lovely coming back to Alton Hall after 6 or 7 years away and seeing sort of like there's 5 professionals down in the shop, and I gave them all their first golf lessons and stuff. Like I was teaching them at like 8, 9 years old and stuff, and that sort of like grows. And for me, I love that because I'm still mentoring them today, and that's what I want from a personal selfish standpoint. I love that side of coaching, to develop elite junior golfers once they get to sort of 13, 14, 15, 16, where they're like, you know what, I buzz off this game. But it takes a lot of the hard work early as well, when you know, from sort of like 5, 6, 7 years, you're laying the foundation of that love of the game. And you know what? It's lovely to see these golfers at 17, 18, 19 that are recreational golfers. They're still playing with their dads and their mates and that. But I get my real buzz off of sort of like the 13, 14, 15-year-olds that really want to give it a go and sort of are invested in it, you know?
So how important are coaches like Phil there? Because it's inspirational just watching him, because you can see his passion, you can see his enthusiasm, and how important and how inspirational is he, you know, to you, to other coaches out there?
Yeah, definitely. Like he seems to be very inspiring. So like he wants to get those juniors more involved and encourage them more. And it's not all about the tournament. It's all about like getting them involved, having fun, making friends.
All right, we're going to bring Ian back in because we are coming towards the end of the podcast here. Obviously, we've been talking about coaching of junior golfers. Ian, you know, obviously you've just heard the interviews there, I think, for the first time, but the golf industry needs someone like him, doesn't it? Coaches like him who can inspire the next generation.
Yeah, he reminds me of Aaron. He's
Yes.
like the English version of Aaron Cox, isn't he? Yeah, it really does. He makes some very good points. You know, golf is a very complicated game, really. Well, it's not, but we seem to make it a very complicated game, really. At the end of the day, it's a few sticks in a bag and a ball, and you've got to get it in a hole 350 yards away, you know. But we seem to make it very difficult. So it needs simplifying at junior level in order to get people into the game and take them further, and Phil's a good bloke to do that, really.
Olivia, can you remember the moment whereby it for you knew that you'd got it, kind of thing, you'd caught the bug?
Probably been when I was about 10, 11, when I started doing like, I got selected for like county, and then I went through like that pathway, and then I actually like looked up to the other girls and wanted to be like them, and obviously now I'm like in the elite squad in the county set up, and obviously I'm one of them now that should be like them looking up to me, and hopefully I'm doing the same as what they did to me.
All right, now we've got a photo. I just want to ask a question to Ian before we put the photo up here. But Ian, have you ever been on a golf course and like danced or anything like that? Or
yeah, I have actually.
Yeah,
numerous times.
Yeah,
like I've done it in front of the camera numerous times, unfortunately.
Yeah, like when you've got an eagle or an albatross or something like that, or
more like when I've probably triple bogeyed and just happy to get off the thing.
Yeah. Now, the reason why I mention this is the fact that there was a few years ago, I took a photo of this junior golfer, and she looked as if she was having so much fun on the golf course. Let's just put the photo up here and just try to describe it to me.
I wonder who it is, Olivia.
Now,
oh dear,
can you just describe exactly what that move is, kind of thing? Now, people from me and Ian's generation, this used to be called walking like the Egyptian. It was like the Bangles song. So just describe exactly what was going on.
Not my generation, still far too young.
Okay, my generation. Sorry, yes.
I honestly could not tell you what I was doing there. I look like I have a stroppy face on, so it couldn't have been a good shot.
It looks a bit, Olivia, like those contortionists, you know, when they go like, you're not double jointed or anything, are you?
Well, no, I don't think so.
Now, I have to say, I think that photo was taken at a Faraday Series event where I think Ian might have interviewed you as well on that.
Where was that? Was that the Vale?
Possibly, yeah.
Because it was a hot day, that hottest day I've ever been on a golf course.
I played the Vale.
Yes.
I played one at Slaley Hall as well.
It would have been the Vale because I've never done Slaley Hall.
Yeah.
But you're like, hey, look, the point with the photo is the fact that I know you might have, it might have been a bit cruel on me taking the photo, but you probably did miss the putt, and you probably, but having the fun on the golf course is the important thing. And even though you're a good, you know, obviously you're a very good player, but you got that enjoyment from a very young age, and you must have got that from the coaching you had at a very young age. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Like the encouragement, and obviously off the coach at the Chase, it was just very like, oh, that's what I want to do. Like, obviously I played many sports, like when I was younger, I did like ice skating and everything, but golf was the one that I chose to stick to, and that obviously I gave up all the others just to do golf.
All right. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast this evening to chat about junior coaching, and also for for letting me get away with stitching you up with a photo there. Me and Ian, we enjoyed that photo, so we thought we better show it, kind of thing. So
she's never going to trust you again, don't you, Steve?
Absolutely, that's it. That will be
Don't blame you, Olivia.
All the
yes.
I'll be there making sure, just standing
Yeah. Right, now, just to mention as well, the next podcast is coming up in 2 weeks' time. So April the 12th, we're going to be looking at junior coaching for older juniors. So that's more the teenage years. Obviously, Olivia now is in these teenage years, so she can certainly relate to what we're going to be talking about. We're going to hear from Phil again, and hopefully we're going to hear from another PGA pro who specialises more in the older generation, if you like, of the junior golfer. So we'll have a completely different take on perhaps how you take someone like Olivia who really enjoy playing the game, and then taking them onto a different level and trying to get them to a really good golfer. It's obviously a different dynamic, but at the same time also taking on those golfers who might just be starting the game at the age of 12, 13, who don't want to go on to become a very good player, but just want to stay in the game. So it's a slightly different dynamic, because obviously you are dealing with a different age group who might have different priorities, might be involved with doing exams, GCSEs and things like that, you see. So going to be a fascinating podcast coming in a couple of weeks' time. Thanks so much, Olivia, for coming on. Thanks so much, Phil, for being part of the podcast as well. So we shall see you in a couple, and of course, thanks so much for Ian as well. We shall see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks to you, Steve, as well, and happy birthday as well. Enjoy the rest of your 3 hours before before you're well into your 50s.
Thank you very much. Yes. Not quite. Not quite. See you later. Have a good evening.
Good evening, everybody.